The chill of the dungeons was sharper than usual that October morning, seeping through the stone walls of Severus Snape's private chambers. The fire crackled weakly in the grate, casting long, flickering shadows across the sparsely furnished room. At the small writing desk by the far wall, Severus sat hunched over a parchment filled with neat, spidery handwriting, an advanced potions formula he had been trying to perfect for weeks. But his attention was elsewhere. A soft sniffle broke the quiet. From the worn sofa near the hearth, a small figure sat curled under a thick green blanket, dark hair tousled and round glasses slightly askew. The boy was pale, far too thin for his age, and far too quiet for a 4-year-old. Severus glanced over his shoulder, his black eyes narrowing. "You're awake." Harry Potter, the boy who lived, looked up and nodded silently. Severus stood, smoothing his robes. "Did you sleep well?" The boy hesitated, then gave a slight shrug. Snape sighed inwardly. The child had been with him for only 3 days, and already Severus was regretting his decision to take the boy in. Not because he didn't want to help him. No, Severus had made a vow to Lily Potter, a promise made silently as he stood at the foot of her grave, but because he had no idea how to talk to children, much less raise one. "Breakfast," he said curtly. "Come." Harry followed, still silent, dragging the blanket behind him like a small cloak. In the adjoining room, the table was already laid with toast, eggs, and porridge. Harry climbed into the high-backed chair and looked around hesitantly. Snape sat opposite him, observing. "You may eat," he said, more gently than he intended. Harry picked up a spoon and dipped it into the porridge. Snape watched him closely, noting every movement. There were bruises still fading on the boy's arms, a legacy from the Dursleys. Those muggles he would never speak to again if he had his way. Minerva had brought Harry to him after discovering the boy locked in a cupboard. She had come to Snape in desperation, unsure what to do. Snape had taken one look at Harry and said, "Leave him with me." He didn't know why he had said it. Perhaps it was Lily's eyes staring up at him, wide and frightened. Perhaps it was guilt, old and poisonous. But now Harry Potter was here, in his care. The boy ate slowly, and Snape didn't push. He returned to his own breakfast, the silence between them not uncomfortable, just quiet. Afterward, Snape gathered a few items from his shelf and returned to the table. "You'll need to start learning," he said. Harry blinked. "Learning?" "Yes." Snape placed a small chalkboard in front of him, along with some colored sticks of chalk. "Letters. Numbers. You are a wizard, but you'll still need to read." Harry looked down at the chalk and nodded solemnly. Snape knelt beside him, pointing at the first letter. "A for aconite. It's a dangerous potion ingredient. Never touch it raw." Harry repeated, aconite. "Good." Snape moved to the next. "B for bezoar." They went on like that, slowly and methodically, and Harry's face lit up just a little as he grasped each new letter. He asked a question, his first since arriving, about what a bezoar looked like. Snape almost smiled. As the day wore on, Snape took Harry on a walk through the less dangerous parts of the castle's dungeons. Harry was fascinated by the floating candles and talking portraits, although he flinched when one barked a greeting too loudly. Snape took note of it. That night, Harry fell asleep curled in the corner of the sofa again, clutching a green stuffed snake Snape had found in an old supply closet. The potions master watched him, the fire's light flickering over his pale face. Minerva had said Dumbledore wouldn't object. In fact, the old man had sounded almost relieved when Severus volunteered to raise the boy. And while Snape had expected this to be a temporary arrangement, something was changing inside him already. He wasn't just watching over the boy. He was beginning to care. Snape sighed, then stood and quietly extinguished the candles with a wave of his wand. The dungeon fell into soft darkness, and he lingered by the door before retreating to his own chamber. Tomorrow, he thought, he would teach the boy how to hold a wand properly. Morning in the dungeons came with no sunlight, only the dim, bluish hue of enchanted lanterns flickering to life. Snape stood by the long shelves of dusty potion ingredients, carefully selecting a few dried leaves and labeled vials. Behind him, the soft sound of shuffling feet and a yawn signaled Harry's arrival. The boy had slept in the same spot again, nestled into the green blanket like it was a cocoon. He rubbed his eyes behind smudged glasses and looked up at Snape with the cautious expectation of someone used to being told to stay out of the way. Snape turned, holding a slim wand box in one hand. "Come here." Harry approached hesitantly, his bare feet silent on the stone floor. Snape opened the box and withdrew a slender wand of holly and phoenix feather. Harry's wand, collected early from Ollivanders at Dumbledore's insistence and kept safely until the time was right. "This," Snape said, kneeling to Harry's eye level, "is yours. A wand. Do not treat it as a toy. It is an extension of your will." Harry stared at it, all blooming in his face. "It's mine." "Yes." Snape held it out. "Take it." Harry reached forward and wrapped his small fingers around the wand. A warm golden light pulsed faintly at the contact. The magic was there, ready to respond, waiting patiently. Snape watched the glow, feeling something unspoken shift in the air. The wand had accepted him. "We'll start with Lumos," Snape said, standing. "It's a simple charm for light. Watch carefully." He demonstrated, flicking his own wand. "Lumos." A white light burst from the tip. Harry tried to mimic the motion, stumbling on the word. "Lumos." "No. Enunciate." "Lumos." Clear and firm. "Try again." "Lumos," Harry said, a bit louder, a bit more confident. The wand tip flickered, only for a second, but it was enough. Snape allowed himself a rare nod of approval. "Good. Again." They practiced for nearly an hour, until Harry's arm trembled from trying. Though he could barely hold the light longer than a few seconds, each success brought a quiet grin to his face. Snape offered no praise beyond the occasional curt nod, but Harry seemed to thrive on that alone. After a simple lunch, they ventured briefly into the upper castle. Snape walked a step behind Harry, robes billowing, his presence an unspoken warning to any curious student or chatty ghost who dared approach. Most kept their distance. Whispers followed them like mist. "Is that him? Potter? But why's he with Snape's kid now? No way." Harry looked up once or twice, confused by the attention, but said nothing. Snape led him through a few quiet corridors and into the library. Madame Pants raised an eyebrow but said nothing as they entered. Snape pulled down a thin children's book on magical creatures and handed it to Harry. "You'll read this today. Sit here. I'll be nearby." Harry took the book reverently and sat at the nearest table, his legs dangling off the chair. Snape remained within view, pretending to skim a tome on advanced brewing techniques, but occasionally glancing over the pages to make sure Harry was still reading, and not being disturbed. For nearly an hour, Harry pored over the book, mouthing out the names of hippogriffs and bowtruckles, stopping now and then to look at the strange drawings. He didn't seem to notice when Snape summoned a second book and placed it beside him, Magical Creatures and Their Temperaments. When they returned to the dungeons, Snape caught sight of a note that had been slid under his door. It bore the headmaster's handwriting. "Severus, please see me at your earliest convenience regarding Harry's placement. Questions are being asked. APWBD." Snape crushed the note in his fist. He didn't need Dumbledore interfering. Not now, not when Harry had just begun to feel safe. He'd speak to the old man soon. On his terms. That evening, Harry was quieter than usual. He played with the toy snake, coiled it around his wrist like a bracelet, then stared into the fire without speaking. Snape was preparing a potion on the far table, the bubbling cauldron casting green light across the room. "Professor," Harry said softly. Snape looked up, more at the use of the title than the tone. "Yes. Why do people look at me like that?" Snape set his ladle down. The boy was staring into the flames, voice barely above a whisper. "They whisper and stare." "Why?" Snape approached slowly, then sat beside him, not too close. "Because they think they know who you are. Because of what happened when you were a baby. But they don't know you." "Not really." Harry frowned. "They talk like I'm famous." "You are. In a way. But fame is foolish, especially when you don't understand it. You are not a symbol, Harry. You are a child." Harry looked at him then, really looked at him. "Do you think I'm normal?" "No," Snape said after a pause. "You're not. But that's not a bad thing." There was silence again, but this time it was lighter, easier. Harry leaned his head against Snape's arm. The potion's master froze, unused to such contact. But he didn't move away. Eventually, When Harry's breathing slowed into sleep, Snape shifted carefully, laying him down on the sofa and adjusting the blanket. He stared at the child for a long moment. Tomorrow, he decided, he would begin teaching Harry about shields and wards, things no one else would think to teach a boy his age. If Dumbledore or anyone else thought they could uproot the child from him now, they would find they had underestimated Severus Snape. And that would be a grave mistake. The next morning, Severus cast a silent charm to warm the dungeon chambers before Harry stirred. The child had taken to sleeping more soundly in the past few nights, and Severus noted the improvement with the same quiet satisfaction he might reserve for a well-brewed potion. Harry sat up slowly, blinking behind his glasses. "Good morning," he mumbled. Severus turned from the fireplace. "Dress. We begin ward work today." Harry perked up immediately. "Like shields?" "Yes, but more complex. Wards are protections that surround a place, not just a person. You will learn both." Snape conjured a simple breakfast, a bowl of porridge with sliced fruit and a small cup of warm milk. As Harry ate, Snape retrieved several aged books and stacked them on the table with a firm thump. "Are these all for me?" Harry asked, wide-eyed. "Basics. Nothing beyond your comprehension," Snape said, sitting beside him. "Wards respond to intent, more than incantation. You must understand what you are protecting and why." Harry looked thoughtful as he spooned up the last bite. "Can I put a ward around you?" Snape's hand stilled on a page. He looked at Harry. "Why would you do that?" Harry shrugged. "You protect me. I thought, maybe I could learn to protect you too." Snape stared at him for a moment, words caught somewhere between his thoughts and his tongue. Finally, he said, "Not yet, but one day." They began in the corridor, just outside his quarters. Snape guided Harry through the motions, using sand and chalk to draw simple warding circles on the floor. Harry watched with fascination as the runes glowed briefly before fading into the stone. Snape murmured, "Protego domus." The walls shimmered faintly. "This ward will alert me if someone uninvited steps inside the area," he explained. "Touch the stone and focus on the idea of safety." Harry pressed his palm to the wall, frowning in concentration. "Safe," he whispered. A moment later, a small pulse of golden light flashed under his hand. Snape arched an eyebrow. "Very good. You'll need to practice that daily." As they returned to the chamber, a sharp knock echoed at the door. Snape's eyes narrowed. No one knocked without reason. He opened the door to reveal Minerva McGonagall, wrapped in her tartan cloak and looking concerned. "Severus," she said. "May I come in?" Snape stepped aside reluctantly. Harry greeted her with a quiet, "Hi, Professor McGonagall." Her face softened as she looked at the boy. "Hello, Harry. You look well." Snape motioned for her to sit while Harry retreated to the sofa, clutching his toy snake again. "What is it?" Snape asked, tone low. "There's been talk," Minerva said, folding her hands in her lap. "In the ministry. About Harry's guardianship." His eyes darkened. "They dare question it now, after what those muggles did? Some believe you're unfit." "Because I don't coddle him like a show pony?" Snape sneered. "Because I don't parade him around the castle?" Minerva shook her head. "It's more complicated. Dumbledore is pushing back, but the Wisengamot is requesting a review." Harry had inched closer, overhearing despite his quietness. "Are they going to take me away?" he asked, voice trembling. Snape stood at once and moved to him. "No one is taking you anywhere." Harry looked up at him, lip trembling. "Promise." "I promise." The words were spoken with deadly certainty. Then Snape turned to Minerva. "They will not have him." Minerva sighed. "You know I support you, Severus. But they'll send someone. An inspector. Let them." She stood. Dumbledore suggested giving them no reason for concern. "Appearances matter." "I do not care about appearances," he snapped. "You should," she said sharply. "If you want to keep him." That struck home. Snape said nothing for a long time, the fire crackling in the silence. Finally, Minerva offered Harry a sad smile and departed. That evening, Snape cleaned the chambers. Not with magic, but by hand. He organized the shelves, dusted the corners, and charmed the stone walls to look slightly brighter. He changed the green blanket for a thicker one with silver embroidery and added a second small bookshelf beside the sofa with illustrated magical readers. Harry watched silently as Snape transfigured an old chair into a low table for drawing and studying. "Why are you changing everything?" he asked. Snape considered lying, but stopped himself. "Because I want the Ministry to see this place as a home." "Your home?" Harry beamed. "It already feels like home to me." Snape froze again, halfway through conjuring new curtains for the windowless arch. That night, when Harry was tucked under the new blanket and the fire was low, Snape sat in his chair, wand in hand, deep in thought. He had enemies in the Ministry. Enemies from both his Death Eater past and his current allegiance to Dumbledore. They would use any excuse to challenge his fitness. But if they came for Harry, they would find him ready. He stood, walked to the shelf, and retrieved an ancient tome on legal wards and magical bonds. If the Ministry wanted to test him, he would bury them in law and parchment. But beyond the technicalities, he needed something more powerful, more binding. A magical oath. Something sacred. He traced his finger down the spine of the book and whispered to himself, "They will not have him." As the fire died out, so too did the light in the dungeon, but not the one in Severus Snape's resolve. Tomorrow, he would begin preparing for war. By the time morning arrived, the dungeon had been transformed, not in its structure, but in its soul. The once dim, cold space now carried warmth. Stacks of storybooks, a handmade charm Harry had drawn with crayons and pinned above the hearth, and an enchanted lantern that twinkled with a soft golden light above his little reading nook. Snape had slept only an hour. He had spent the night warding the chamber with subtle spells, masking its darkness with gentle illusions and weaving in protective enchantments so tightly that even the castle walls would hesitate to give up its secrets. He was prepared. Or so he thought. The knock came precisely at 10 a.m. A cold, measured sound, 3 short raps, then silence. Snape opened the door to a tall man in slate-gray robes, his expression unreadable, silver spectacles perched precisely on the bridge of his nose. A Ministry badge gleamed on his chest, Damocles' flint, Department of Magical Welfare and Oversight. "Professor Snape," the man said smoothly, "I am here to conduct a routine welfare assessment of one Harry James Potter. You've been informed." "I have." Snape stepped aside. "Enter." Harry stood near the sofa, nervously twisting his fingers. His green eyes met the inspector's for a moment, then dropped. Flint's gaze swept the room, taking in everything with dispassionate efficiency. "A dungeon, Professor? This is the most secure location in the castle," Snape said calmly. "I've warded it against all known forms of magical intrusion. It is warm, protected, and well-suited for privacy. Harry is safe here." "I'll judge that for myself," Flint said, already conjuring a quill and clipboard. He turned to Harry. "Hello, Mr. Potter. May I ask you a few questions?" Harry nodded, voice small. "Yes, sir. Do you feel safe here?" Harry looked at Snape, then back at Flint. "Yes. Very. Does Professor Snape ever leave you alone for long periods?" "No," Harry said. "He teaches me things. Every day." "What kind of things?" "Letters. Spells. How to use my wand properly. And today I learned how to put a ward on a wall." Flint raised an eyebrow. "He's teaching you magic already?" "It is supervised and foundational," Snape cut in coolly. "Nothing beyond simple enchantments." Flint scratched something down on his clipboard, then walked slowly around the room, inspecting the furnishings. "No windows," he muttered. "We're underground," Snape said. "It's Hogwarts, not a Muggle cottage." "Still, sunlight's important for a child's development. His magical health is stable. I perform weekly diagnostics. I'll require copies of those reports." Snape narrowed his eyes. "You'll receive what is legally required. No more." Flint moved toward the little table covered in Harry's drawings, snakes, castles, and a crude but clearly labeled me and Professor picture. He paused at that one. "He calls you Professor still?" Snape gave a slight nod. "That is his choice." Flint turned back to Harry, softer now. "Do you know why you're living here, Harry?" Harry nodded. "Because my aunt and uncle were mean. They hurt me. Professor Snape saved me." There was silence. Flint didn't write anything. "And you want to stay?" Harry looked startled that the question was even asked. "Yes." Flint closed his clipboard slowly. "Very well. I will need to speak with you alone, Professor Snape." Snape's jaw tensed, but he nodded. "Harry, your room." Harry scampered off to the little chamber Snape had transfigured into a bedroom the night before. The inspector waited until he heard the door click shut before speaking. "I will be blunt, Snape. Your history is concerning." "I have been cleared of all past affiliations," Snape said icily, "by the Wisengamot themselves." "Yes, but guardianship is not about legality alone. It's about suitability, affection, stability." Snape's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "You will not find a more stable environment than this one." Flint tilted his head. "He does seem well. The boy trusts you. But understand me, if I so much as sense the presence of old allegiances resurfacing or detect a pattern of neglect, you will lose him." "I won't." The inspector eyed him for another long moment, then gave a curt nod. "Expect a follow-up, possibly unannounced. Do not grow complacent." When the door finally closed behind Flint, Snape stood in the silence, heart thudding with a fury he had kept deeply buried. Every muscle in his body itched to lash out, to hex something into splinters. But then, Harry's head peeked out from the bedroom. "Did I do okay?" Snape's anger vanished. "You did very well," he said softly. "You were honest. That matters." Harry walked up, reaching for his hand. "Are they still going to try and take me?" "They'll try," Snape admitted. "But they won't succeed." "Good." Harry gave his hand a squeeze. "I don't want to go anywhere." Snape knelt slowly, so they were eye level. "And I'll make sure you never have to." There was a quiet beat of silence, and then Harry did something unexpected. He leaned forward and hugged him. Snape froze. His arms hovered awkwardly before settling around the boy, hesitant but real. It was a moment of unfamiliar warmth, strange, fragile, terrifying. And Severus Snape, for all his pride and sharpness, knew one thing for certain. He would destroy anyone who tried to shatter it. The tension from the inspector's visit lingered like smoke long after Damocles' flint had departed. Even with the dungeon wards undisturbed and Harry tucked into his newly enchanted room, Snape couldn't sleep. He sat by the fireplace, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, eyes reflecting the low, flickering flames. The boy had hugged him. It shouldn't have mattered. It shouldn't have cracked the wall of self-control he'd spent a lifetime building. But it had. That brief, trusting embrace had struck something far more dangerous than sentiment. It had lit a fire in his veins. Snape wasn't just Harry's guardian now. He was his. And nothing, no ministry paper pusher, no scheming official, no ancient grudge, was going to take Harry away. By morning, he had made a decision. Harry found him standing by the cauldron, swirling a thick, pale blue potion that shimmered with silvery light. "What's that?" the boy asked, wiping sleep from his eyes. "A concealment draft," Snape replied without looking up. "It masks magical signatures. I'm modifying it. For you." Harry patted over. "Why do I need to hide?" "Not hide. Protect. Your magical core is unique, strong. If anyone attempted to trace or interfere with it, this will make it nearly impossible." "Oh!" Harry looked at the bubbling potion, his voice soft. "Because of the inspector?" Snape gave a slow nod. "Because not everyone has your best interests at heart." He poured the potion into a small vial, enchanted it with a stasis charm, and stored it in a locked drawer. "Come," he said. "Today we work on shielding." They stepped into the wide corridor outside the quarters, where Snape had cleared a space specifically for spell work. The torches burned high on the walls, giving the cold stones a little life. Snape drew his wand and stood at one end of the hallway. Harry faced him at the other. "Protego," Snape instructed. "You must concentrate not on repelling me, but on protecting yourself. Understand the difference." Harry nodded nervously. "Okay, Protego." Nothing happened. Again. He tried. Again and again, and each time only a flicker emerged, like his wand wanted to obey, but didn't quite understand how. Snape lowered his wand. "You're overthinking. Picture someone hurting you. Picture yourself refusing to let them." Harry swallowed. He thought of Dudley. Aunt Petunia's shrieks. The cupboard. His fingers tightened around the wand. "Protego," he shouted. The shield burst from his wand like a white bubble, flickering wildly but holding. Snape's expression didn't change, but inside something stirred. "Progress. Maintain it," he instructed, then cast a weak jinx, just a light nudge of force. It hit the shield and deflected. Harry yelped but grinned. "I did it." Don't celebrate too early. Snape raised his wand again. Now again. Stronger this time. For over an hour they trained. The shield fluctuated, cracked, and reformed, each time just a bit stronger than before. Later, as they walked back inside, Harry dragging his feet in exhaustion, Snape handed him a chocolate frog. "You earned it," he said shortly. Harry's eyes lit up. "Really? Don't make me repeat myself." Harry opened it quickly and watched the wizard card leap out. "Hey, it's you," he laughed. "It's got your picture on it." Snape snatched the card away, glaring at the animated version of himself sneering on the front. "Give me that. But you look so grumpy." "Exactly." He pocketed it. "I don't need animated versions of myself scowling at my ward." Harry giggled all the way to the sofa. That evening a knock came again, but it wasn't the Ministry. It was Dumbledore. Snape opened the door slowly, his expression unreadable. "Albus, may I?" the headmaster asked gently. Snape stepped aside. Dumbledore entered, his eyes taking in the carefully arranged chamber, the books, the faint scent of potion and chalk, and finally Harry, curled up under the silver-embroidered blanket, reading aloud to his toy snake. "I heard about the inspector's visit," Dumbledore said quietly. "He's gone," Snape replied. "For now. They'll come again." "I know." Dumbledore studied him. "I must ask, do you truly understand what you've taken on, Severus?" Snape's eyes flicked to Harry, then back. "Yes. This isn't a temporary charge. It's not penance. It's a life. A child who trusts you with more than his safety. He trusts you with his heart." "I am aware," Snape said curtly. Dumbledore sighed. "And yet I worry. Not about your intentions, but your capacity." Snape's gaze turned cold. "You doubt me. I wonder if you'll let yourself love him without fearing what it means." Snape said nothing. He crossed his arms, shoulders tight. "You've already begun," Dumbledore said quietly. "Whether you admit it or not." Harry looked up then, spotting the headmaster. "Hi, Professor Dumbledore." Dumbledore smiled warmly. "Hello, Harry. I see you're settling in quite well." "I am. Professor Snape teaches me loads of cool things. He even let me help with potions yesterday." Snape winced slightly. "Did he now?" Dumbledore chuckled. "Then I must be careful not to eat anything that glows." Harry giggled. "I'll be watching from afar," Dumbledore said to Snape. "But I won't interfere again unless I must. Just be careful, Severus. This boy changes people." With that, he left. When the door closed again, Harry asked softly, "Did I do something wrong?" Snape looked down at him and shook his head. "You've done everything right." Harry smiled and curled back into the blanket. As the flames flickered lower that night, Snape stood at the doorway, watching him sleep. The fire in his veins had cooled, but only into something sharper. Determination. Let them come, he thought. Let the Ministry crawl through his past and poke at his scars. He had faced worse. He would face worse still. But he would never let Harry down. 2 weeks passed without another visit from the Ministry, but the silence only sharpened Snape's vigilance. He kept watch over Harry like a hawk in slow circles, never quite letting the boy notice, but always close enough that no harm would touch him. Harry, meanwhile, thrived. He absorbed everything Snape taught him like a sponge dropped into a cauldron: runes, basic potions theory, even the Latin roots behind the spells. He was bright, eager, and increasingly bold. He began asking questions, sharp ones, about everything from magical theory to Snape's own past. "Why do you wear black all the time?" Harry asked one evening, poking at Snape's robes with the tip of a sugar quill. "Because it's practical," Snape replied, brushing the quill away. "And scary," Harry added, grinning. Snape raised an eyebrow. "Fear is a useful tool." Harry tilted his head. "But not with me, right?" The words lingered in the air. Snape looked at the boy, his ridiculous, brave eyes, his mess of hair, the lightning scar carved into his brow. "No," Snape said softly. "Not with you." That night, Snape sat alone at his desk long after Harry had gone to bed. He unsealed a drawer that had been closed for years and drew out an old, thin photograph. Lily. Her face smiled up at him, timeless and radiant, holding baby Harry in her arms. Snape exhaled shakily. "I swore I'd protect him. I just never imagined." He let the sentence drift. The photograph didn't answer. The next morning brought an owl, unfamiliar, dark-feathered, with cold yellow eyes. It dropped a letter onto Snape's desk and immediately flew off. No ministry seal, no Hogwarts insignia. Snape opened it carefully. It was brief. You have the boy. You have his trust. But you are not the only one who remembers who you used to be. Watch yourself. His blood ran cold. There were too many possibilities. A former Death Eater? A ministry sympathizer? Someone with a grudge? Snape burned the letter instantly, muttering a curse under his breath. He reinforced the dungeon wards within the hour, weaving in layers of anti-scrying and notice-me-not enchantments that would confuse even the sharpest of magical trackers. Later that day, as Harry worked on a basic Lumos charm variation, Snape hovered near the door, eyes distant. "Professor," Harry said, peering up from his parchment. "You okay?" Snape forced his features into calm. "Yes. Continue." Harry watched him a moment longer before nodding. "Okay." That night, Snape received a second message, this time no letter. A mark, burned into the stone of his private quarters' outer wall. A crude imitation of the dark mark, carved deep with some sort of hot blade. The past was reaching out, and it wasn't subtle. He paced his rooms after Harry fell asleep, long robes swishing behind him. He didn't want to bring this to Dumbledore. Not yet. Not without knowing more. But he couldn't ignore it either. Snape opened a hidden cupboard, revealing vials of truth serum, emergency port keys, and an enchanted journal bound in dragon hide. He hadn't touched it in over a decade. It was a communication tool, created by the old inner circle to pass messages safely during the war. Most of them were dead, imprisoned, or worse. He tapped the cover. Initiate silent query. The page glowed faintly. Current users, 1 unknown signature. Encryption bypass in progress. Snape cursed and closed the book. Someone had reactivated it, but they weren't broadcasting. They were watching. Whoever it was, they had ties to the old world. And they were circling. The following day, Snape sat Harry down at the table. "I need to teach you something new," he said, voice low. Harry perked up. "A spell?" "No. A rule." Harry blinked. "Okay. If someone ever tries to take you from this place, before I say it's safe, you run. Not to anyone. Not to Dumbledore. Not to McGonagall. Not to the Ministry. You run straight to the chamber beneath the fireplace and stay there until I come for you." Harry frowned. "Is something wrong?" Snape didn't answer immediately. "I don't know yet. But I won't let anything happen to you." Harry nodded slowly. "I trust you." That night, after Harry was asleep, Snape sat by the fire again, Lily's photograph still resting on the desk beside him. He picked it up, held it to the light. "I failed you once," he whispered. "I won't do it again." Suddenly, the flames turned green, and a head appeared in the fire. Lucius Malfoy. Snape didn't move. "Severus," Lucius said smoothly. "We should talk. I don't speak to ghosts. Oh, I'm very much alive. And I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to offer perspective. I'm not interested." "You should be," Lucius said, eyes gleaming. "Because the boy is drawing attention. And if you think you can hide him from all of us forever." Snape stood, wand in hand. "Speak another word, and I'll curse your tongue out of your mouth." Lucius smiled coldly. "Touchy. I suppose we'll continue this conversation soon." And then he vanished. Snape stared at the flames. The fire in his veins was back, and this time it burned cold. Enemies were circling, and he was done waiting for them to strike first. By the next morning, Snape was already preparing. His instructions to Harry that day were curt. "Study quietly. Do not leave these chambers. Do not open the door for anyone but me. If I am not back by nightfall, activate the fireplace rune and follow the escape protocol." Harry stared at him, wide-eyed. "Where are you going?" "To tie off loose ends," Snape said simply, adjusting the cuffs of his robes. "And to send a message." Before Harry could protest, Snape had swept out of the quarters and into the dark halls of the dungeons. He did not take the main staircase. Instead, he twisted through forgotten corridors, down a disused passage that led to the forbidden side of the castle, where the shadows were thicker, the air colder, and the magic older than the school itself. He wasn't going to the Ministry, nor to Dumbledore. He was going below. There was a place in Hogwarts few remembered, a chamber sealed before the marauders ever roamed the halls. an ancestral Slytherin sanctum, long abandoned. Snape had found it years ago, during his time as a student, but he had never used it. Until now. He approached a section of wall between two cracked, moss-covered columns. Raising his wand, he hissed, Serpentia Excoriae. The stones trembled, groaned, and parted. He stepped into the dark, sealing the entrance behind him. The chamber was cavernous, lit only by pale green torchlight that flickered to life at his arrival. Silver and black tiles lined the floor. A huge mosaic serpent curled across the ceiling above, and ancient magical wards shimmered in the air like threads of silk. He wasn't alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, cloaked, and masked. Snape didn't need to see the face to know. "Rodolphus," he said coldly. The Death Eater inclined his head, removing his mask. "Severus. Always one step ahead, aren't you? You left me a message. Consider it a warning." Snape stepped forward. "You'll find I don't respond well to threats. You've taken something that doesn't belong to you. I've taken responsibility. That is not the same thing." Rodolphus narrowed his eyes. "You think raising the boy changes what he is?" Snape's voice dropped to a near whisper, every syllable laced with menace. "He's a child. He's the Dark Lord's downfall," Rodolphus hissed. "His magic isn't normal. He doesn't belong in a dungeon with you. He belongs in the hands of those who understand what he truly is. He belongs with someone who will protect him." "You mean use him?" Snape's wand was in his hand in an instant, pointed directly at Rodolphus's heart. "Leave him alone." For a moment, the two stared each other down, magic vibrating faintly in the air between them. Rodolphus finally smirked. "So it's true. You care about him. I'll kill anyone who tries to harm him." Rodolphus stepped back, clearly unimpressed. "You've forgotten what side you once stood on." "No," Snape replied. "I remember it too well. That's why I left." He cast a spell, and the runes embedded in the walls pulsed violently. Chains of enchanted light snapped into place around the perimeter, forcing Rodolphus to retreat into the passage he had come from. "You're not welcome here, nor in this castle. Tell whoever is still listening, Harry Potter is under my protection, and they will not survive trying to take him." He turned and walked away without waiting for a reply. The chains clamped shut behind him with a thunderous boom. Back in his quarters, Harry was pacing nervously. His books lay abandoned, his wand clutched tightly in his hand. Fong, Hagrid's old gift, lay curled at his feet, watching him with gleaming eyes. When the door opened and Snape stepped in, whole and silent, Harry jumped up. "Are you okay?" Snape said nothing for a long moment. Then he bent down and looked Harry square in the eye. "If I tell you something, you must promise to listen." Harry nodded quickly. "Dark wizards may come looking for you. Some will pretend to be friends. Some may even use my name. If they do, you are to run immediately. You understand?" "Yes," Harry said, voice trembling. Snape reached into his cloak and withdrew a small, rune-carved stone. "This is a portkey. Only works when activated by your voice. Say Sanctum, and it will bring you to a protected location. You are never to use it unless I am." He paused. "Unless I am not there." Harry looked at the stone, then back up at him. "You think something's going to happen? I know something already has." That night, Snape didn't sleep. He warded every inch of the quarters, embedding dark-runed curses in the stone itself. Not illegal, just old. Forgotten. Powerful. He read Harry a story to help him fall asleep, something he'd never done before. And when Harry was finally curled up, snoring softly, Snape sat nearby and watched. He remembered the chamber. Rodolphus's sneer. The old words, "He doesn't belong in a dungeon with you." Snape curled his hand into a fist. "He belongs here," he whispered. "Where no one can use him. Where he's safe." The photograph of Lily lay next to him again. "I swear it." And the dungeon, for all its gloom, felt just a little warmer. But far beyond the castle, in a manor cloaked in shadow, a gathering was forming. Figures cloaked in black murmured plans over parchment and firelight. They were watching. And they were waiting. The morning after Snape's confrontation in the hidden chamber, the air in the dungeons felt heavier. The magic clung to the stone like mist, and the shadows in the corners seemed deeper than usual. Snape rose early and, after ensuring Harry was still asleep, donned his cloak and swept out of the quarters without a sound. He had delayed this meeting long enough. The corridors of Hogwarts were quiet at dawn, echoing slightly with each step of his boots. When he reached the spiral staircase leading to the headmaster's office, the stone guardian gave him a wary glance before shifting aside at the password he offered. Moonflower root. The stairs carried him upward with a low, grinding hum. Dumbledore was seated behind his great desk, his hands folded, his expression unreadable. Fawkes chirped softly from his perch, and a steaming cup of tea sat untouched on the desk beside a towering stack of parchment. "Severus," Dumbledore said, as if he'd been expecting him. "Snape didn't waste time. He's being watched, threatened, and I've received more than one message from those who would see the boy used." Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled faintly, but there was something colder beneath them now. "The world has not forgotten who Harry is. They see him as a weapon, and I will not allow that." Dumbledore sighed. "Nor do I wish it. But you must understand, there are forces beyond even our sight. And many in the wizarding world are uneasy. A child raised by a man once known as a Death Eater? It is not a comforting thought." "I have protected him," Snape snapped. "Trained him. He's safer with me than he ever was with those muggles." "I do not doubt your intentions, Severus," Dumbledore replied calmly. "But intentions will not stop those who are already plotting." Snape stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Then help me. Stand publicly with me. A statement. Anything." Dumbledore hesitated, just long enough for Snape to notice. "I cannot," he said finally. "The Ministry watches me as closely as it watches you. Perhaps more. If I appear to support your guardianship too openly, it may strengthen the opposition. They may act sooner. Then you're willing to let them take him?" "No," Dumbledore said firmly. "But we must play the long game, Severus. We must prepare quietly." Snape's mouth twisted. "You always did prefer your games." He turned on his heel and stormed from the office, Dumbledore's voice following him like a shadow. "Be careful, Severus. They will come for him, and for you." Back in the dungeons, Harry had awoken to find a note pinned to his blanket. "Stay indoors. Do not open the door. I will return shortly. S." He sat up, blinking the sleep from his eyes, and immediately ran to the sitting room, checking every corner. No Snape. No signs of intrusion. Just silence. He stared at the fireplace for a long time, considering the rune. But Snape did return. Just as Harry was beginning to panic, the door unlatched, and the older man entered with robes billowing like storm clouds behind him. "Where did you go?" Harry demanded, trying not to sound scared. "To speak with someone who should have acted months ago." "Dumbledore." Snape raised an eyebrow. "You're far too observant." Harry hesitated. "Did he help?" Snape said nothing. The answer was clear. They resumed their studies that afternoon, though Harry noticed Snape was quieter than usual. His instructions were still sharp, but his mind was elsewhere. By evening, they sat together by the fire, books spread across the low table, but the tension in the room crackled like a charged spell. "I don't want to go anywhere else," Harry said softly, breaking the silence. "Even if they tell me I have to." Snape looked at him. "That may not always be your choice." "Then I'll run," Harry said defiantly. "Like you said." Snape allowed a small, rare smile to cross his face. "Let's hope it never comes to that." But even as he said it, there was a chill in his spine he could not shake. That night, another owl came. This one bore no note, just a strip of black ribbon tied tightly around its leg. Snape's hands clenched the moment he saw it. It was a sign, a mark from the Lestrange family. A message known only among the old Death Eater ranks. "We are close." Snape didn't tell Harry. Instead, he prepared. He doubled the warding runes. He enchanted the walls themselves to alert him at the first tremor of intrusion. He moved his most dangerous potion ingredients into hidden compartments only he could access. And then he began teaching Harry something new. "A clemency," Snape said one morning. "Mental defense. Shielding your thoughts from intrusion." Harry frowned. "Why would someone try to get in my head?" "Because your mind holds secrets even you don't understand yet." "But, how do I stop them?" Snape handed him a book, The Mind's Mirror, Shielding the Conscious Mind from Magical Influence. "We begin with study," he said, "but eventually you'll need to learn to feel when someone is trying to break in. It will hurt, but you must resist." Harry swallowed. "Will you do it?" Try to break in, I mean. I will, Snape said solemnly. But never to harm you. Only to protect you. And so began the next phase of Harry's training. Snape was unrelenting. His mental probes were precise, swift, and brutal, but Harry endured. He failed at first. Again and again. But each time he recovered more quickly, resisted a little longer. I saw something, Harry said one evening after a session. It wasn't mine. It was yours. A girl with red hair. Snape's breath hitched. You're not ready to see my memories, he said quietly. Not yet. Was she my mum? Snape turned away. Enough for today. The silence that followed was different than before. Heavy, yes, but tinged with understanding. Harry didn't press. He just nodded. And deep within the castle walls, the magic stirred. Enemies were watching. But so was something older. Older than Hogwarts. Older than even the war that had left Harry an orphan. Something was awakening. And soon neither Snape nor Harry would be able to hide. The dungeon torches flickered as though disturbed by a passing breath, though the air in Snape's quarters remained still. Harry slept restlessly under a warming charm, his forehead damp with sweat. Across the room, Snape sat in rigid silence, eyes locked on the flickering firelight. He had felt it again. A pulse. Magic moving unnaturally through the castle. Subtle. Cold. Watching. Something ancient, buried deep within the stone, had begun to stir, and Snape could no longer pretend it was just paranoia. With deliberate precision, he unrolled a hidden parchment from a compartment beneath the floorboards. It was covered in runes and lines, centuries old, a secret map of Hogwarts' deepest wards, one only passed down through generations of Slytherin descent. Few knew it existed. He traced one of the lower symbols, shaped like a jagged serpent. The foundation rune. It had flared, and only powerful dark magic could have done that. Snape rose, securing his wand beneath his sleeve, and cast a final glance toward Harry. Then, as silently as shadow, he slipped into the passageway behind the fireplace, a narrow tunnel that ran deeper into the castle's bones than most knew existed. Each step felt colder than the last. He descended into blackness, past the dungeons, past the buried catacombs, into a layer of the school untouched for over 1,000 years. When he reached the ancient gate, the Gate of Aegis, it was called, he felt it before he saw it. Blood magic. Fresh. Someone had trespassed. Someone powerful. He muttered, Revelar. The stone shimmered. Red runes ignited in a circle. And in their center, a name. Potter. Snape's stomach turned. Not Harry's blood, but blood of his line. This wasn't just about the boy, it was about what ran through his veins. The protection was weakening, and someone had found the fault line. He hurried back. When he returned, Harry was awake, sitting cross-legged on the couch with a stack of books scattered around him. He looked up immediately. You were gone again. Snape crossed to him and knelt, hands on his shoulders. Did anything happen while I was away? Harry blinked. No, just weird dreams. Snape's grip tightened. Describe them. Harry frowned. A room. Circular. Green walls. A pool in the middle. It whispered. I couldn't understand the words. Snape stood abruptly and turned away. His mind raced. The dreaming pool. One of the castle's oldest magical constructs. Forgotten by all but the most obsessive historians. And now, somehow, reaching out to Harry through his dreams? Professor, it felt like the room wanted me there. He turned. You will never go near any room in this castle without me. Ever. Do you understand? Harry nodded quickly. Yes, sir. But even as the boy agreed, Snape could feel it, the castle pulling at Harry. Old magic awakening in response to something within him. Not just blood. Power. And not only were the Lestranges watching, others were beginning to feel it too. That evening, Snape sent a message by owl. Not to Dumbledore. Not to the Ministry. To an old contact. A former unspeakable who owed him a favor. The message was short. The wards are failing. Bloodlines are reacting. I need information on the pool and the foundation rune. Now. He sealed it with his own magical signature and whispered a tracing charm to follow the owl all the way to its destination. The reply came only hours later. A torn page from a forbidden text and a hastily scrawled note. You're not wrong. Someone has begun the rite of resonance. They're testing how much power the Potter boy can channel. Stop it now or lose him forever. Snape's blood turned cold. The rite of resonance was an ancient magical ritual used to awaken latent abilities tied to bloodline inheritance. Forbidden for centuries. Dangerous even in controlled conditions. And someone was using Harry, without his consent. He returned to Harry, who had fallen asleep curled up with a book still open on his chest. The boy's expression was pinched, eyes fluttering in some silent nightmare. Snape leaned over him and cast a soft, invisible charm. One that would trigger the moment any foreign magical intrusion reached his mind again. He wouldn't let them take him. Not through politics. Not through magic. And not through dreams. But even Snape knew this was no longer a game of wizards alone. Hogwarts itself was shifting. Whispers had returned to the halls. Echoes of forgotten magic. That night, portraits in the castle stirred in their frames. Some awoke screaming. Others simply vanished from their canvases. Even the ghosts, sensitive to deep magic, began drifting away from certain areas. And in the Gryffindor common room, far from the dungeons, Neville Longbottom awoke in a cold sweat, whispering, "He's waking up." He couldn't explain who he meant. But the echoes knew. And they were listening. Harry woke the next morning with a strange weight in his chest, as if something heavy had been pressing down on him all night. The warmth of Snape's wards was still present, a faint hum beneath the surface of his skin, but he couldn't shake the lingering unease. Snape was already up, hunched over the table with a book open and several ancient-looking scrolls unrolled beside it. He didn't look up when Harry patted in. "Sit," Snape said without preamble. "We're going to talk about what you saw in your dream. All of it." Harry hesitated, then nodded. There was a pool. Circular room. It glowed green, and there were whispers. I couldn't understand them, but I felt them. Like they knew me. Snape's fingers tensed around the edge of the scroll. "And you heard nothing else? No names?" "No. Just something calling me. Not a voice exactly. Like a pull." Snape finally looked up. "That pool is real. It's buried in the lower foundations of Hogwarts, beneath even the catacombs. It's called the Dreaming Pool, one of the oldest magical locations in the castle. It was designed to respond to bloodlines, to power. Especially ancient ones." Harry swallowed. "So why is it calling me?" Snape didn't answer at first. He stood, crossed the room, and pulled a faded map from the drawer of an old cabinet. It looked like Hogwarts, but distorted, older. The walls and towers were differently shaped, as if the castle had once been another form entirely. "This," Snape said, spreading it out on the table, "is a reconstruction of Hogwarts' pre-foundation design. Before it was what we now know. Before the founders formalized the wards. There were original chambers, deeper magics, sealed off by generations of headmasters." He pointed to a symbol etched in the lower right quadrant of the map, a spiraled rune encircling a dot. "The pool sits here. And this," he tapped the symbol, "is where the rite begins." Harry stared at it. "You think someone's trying to use that thing on me?" "I know they are." Snape's voice dropped into a growl. "They've already begun. The dreams are proof. You're being lured bit by bit to unlock something dangerous. It's subtle now, but eventually it won't just be whispers. It'll be compulsion." Harry was quiet for a long moment. "Why me? Just because I'm a Potter?" Snape hesitated. "You're more than that. There are traces in your bloodline that connect back further than even the Potters knew. And you have power. Untapped. They want to trigger it before you're old enough to resist." Harry looked at the spiraled symbol again. "So what do? "We seal the source," Snape said. "But it's not as simple as closing a door. The Dreaming Pool is bound to the castle's very structure. It was built into its heart. To close it, we must reactivate an older protection, a counter-ritual that binds the pool to a neutral state." "Like canceling it out?" "In a sense," Snape said. "But to do that, we'll need a relic. One that's been hidden away for decades." Harry sat forward. "Where?" Snape looked at him grimly. "The Mirror of Erist." Harry's eyes widened. "I've seen that before. In first year, before Christmas. It shows you your heart's desire. It also has another function," Snape said. "It reflects true intent. It's not just a curiosity. It was once used in ancient rituals to test purity of purpose. If we use it as a conduit, we can direct your magic away from the pool." stop it from linking to you. Harry frowned. But I thought it was moved. It was, Snape confirmed. Dumbledore had it hidden. He didn't trust anyone else with it. So we need to find it. We will find it, Snape said, already gathering supplies. But we must act quickly. The longer the pool's link remains open, the harder it will be to sever. As they prepared to leave, Snape taught Harry a protective charm, Obex Mentis, a mental ward that could buy a few moments of resistance if the pool tried to pull him again. Harry practiced it until his head ached. They moved through the school at night, unseen, cloaked in disillusionment charms and silence. Snape led him through passages Harry had never seen before. Hidden staircases behind stone bookcases, paintings that shifted aside for them without question. Eventually, they reached a forgotten chamber sealed behind the third-floor corridor, once guarded by Fluffy, the three-headed dog. Snape performed a complex unlocking spell, and the door creaked open into a narrow corridor lined with mirrors and dusty statuary. At the end stood the mirror of Ariste. It looked exactly as Harry remembered. Ornate, golden, ancient. But now its surface shimmered slightly even without anyone looking into it. Harry approached it slowly, wary of what he might see. Don't look directly at it, Snape warned. Not yet. It could interfere. Instead, Snape drew a silver dagger from his robes and nicked his own palm, letting the blood drip onto the base of the mirror. To awaken its secondary function, it must recognize intention. The glass rippled. And then it changed. Instead of reflection, it began to glow from within, like water lit by moonlight. Snape turned to Harry. Place your hand on the frame. Focus on who you are, not who others want you to be. Push back against the call of the pool. Harry did as told. As soon as his fingers touched the cold metal, he felt a jolt run through him. The whispers surged, but this time he could hear them. You are ours. Come below. Awaken. But Harry shouted back with his mind, No. I am not yours. The mirror pulsed. For a moment the room dimmed. Then the whispers stopped. Snape staggered back, stunned. It worked. You've broken the link, for now. But the mirror's surface did not go still. Instead, it displayed a swirling vision. A face, shrouded, ancient, eyes glowing with green fire. Snape stepped in front of Harry instantly. We've been seen. The figure inside the mirror grinned. And then, with a sound like shattering glass, the mirror went dark. Harry whispered, Who is that? Snape's face was pale. Someone who shouldn't exist anymore. Above them, the castle groaned. The old wards were reacting. The darkness was no longer just a whisper. It was coming. The dust had not yet settled in the chamber when Snape turned sharply, wand raised, eyes locked on the darkened mirror. Every instinct screamed at him that the presence they had seen wasn't just watching. It had reached through, tried to touch, tried to anchor. Harry stood beside him, trembling but defiant. That thing in the mirror, it felt like it knew me. Snape's jaw tightened. It did. He waved his wand and conjured a thin shield of shimmering silver between them and the now inert glass. We don't have much time. It's no longer testing you, it's marking you. Marking? Harry echoed. Snape turned to him, voice clipped and low. The ritual they've begun, the rite of resonance, it doesn't just awaken power. It claims it. If we hadn't used the mirror tonight, that entity would have found a foothold in your mind. It still might. Harry's stomach churned. What was it? Snape hesitated. Then for the first time, he said the name aloud. Morvin. Harry blinked. Who? Morvin the Boundless, Snape said grimly. An ancient sorcerer. A predecessor to the Founders. Forgotten in most histories because they chose to bury his name. He believed magic should be absolute, that those with ancient bloodlines should rule all others. Harry frowned. And you think he's still alive? No, Snape said. But remnants of him remain. Imprints. Pieces of will tied to magical places and bloodlines. The Dreaming Pool is one such place. Harry looked at the mirror. So what now? Snape tapped the map again, revealing more ancient runes. If Morvin's presence is waking, others will follow. And if anyone has access to the pool's secrets, they'll try to resurrect more than memories. They'll want his power. We can't let that happen. No, Snape agreed, we can't. He pocketed the mirror of Ariste's frame with a shrinking charm and led Harry out of the hidden chamber. As they emerged into the main castle, something had changed. The halls were colder. The stone itself seemed to pulse beneath their feet. A few steps into the corridor, Peeves, the poltergeist, shot past them, cackling madly, trailing a stream of floating ink bottles. "What's gotten into him?" Harry asked. Snape's lips pressed into a thin line. "He feels the disruption. Peeves is chaos incarnate, and even he is unbalanced." As they rounded the corner, they nearly collided with Professor McGonagall. Her stern expression faltered when she saw them. "Severus? Harry, what are you doing out of bounds?" Snape straightened. "There's been a breach. The old protections tied to the Foundation wards. One of them has flared. We intercepted it." McGonagall's eyes narrowed. "The boy, was he targeted?" Snape didn't answer directly. "He was drawn to the mirror. We stopped it in time. But we need Dumbledore now." She gave a curt nod. "Follow me." They made their way swiftly through the castle. In the headmaster's office, the silver instruments were spinning faster than usual, emitting strange chimes. Fawkes the Phoenix gave a low, mournful cry. Dumbledore stood behind his desk, face unusually grave. "Ah," he said quietly as they entered. "I was expecting you." Snape stepped forward. "You knew." "I suspected," Dumbledore admitted, steepling his fingers. "The wards began to shift last week. I was hoping it would pass, but it seems I hoped too much." Harry looked between them. "Who is Morvin? Why would he want me?" Dumbledore gazed at him for a long moment. Morvin was the one who laid the first magical foundation beneath this castle, before the Founders ever arrived. He believed only those with true magical heritage deserved to wield power. He used blood magic to shape the pool, binding it to his own line and others like it. He looked directly at Harry. "And you, Harry, are one of the last living remnants of that line." Harry's breath caught. "You mean I'm related to him?" "Distantly. By blood, not by will," Dumbledore clarified. "But that's all the pool needs. A key to open the past." Snape's eyes flashed. "Why wasn't this buried more deeply?" "Because we feared even burying it might awaken it. Silence was deemed the better safeguard." Harry stood still for a long time. "So if I don't do something, he might come back?" Dumbledore nodded solemnly. "Yes. Through you, or through another who shares your lineage. But with your strength, he would be unstoppable." Snape stepped forward. "Then we destroy the pool." Dumbledore sighed. "Easier said than done. The pool is intertwined with the castle's very core. If we simply destroy it, we risk collapsing parts of the castle itself, or worse, unleashing trapped magics." "Then we seal it," Snape said. "With a blood binding. A final lock." "That would require a sacrifice," Dumbledore said quietly. "Something of value. Something deeply personal to the boy." Harry squared his shoulders. "I'll do it." Both men looked at him in surprise. "I don't want anyone using me," Harry said firmly. "If it'll stop this Morvin thing, I'll give up whatever I need to." Dumbledore's eyes gleamed, just slightly. "You're braver than you know." He opened a drawer and retrieved a silver orb. "This contains a pathway to the Foundation chamber. It hasn't been used in hundreds of years. Severus, you'll go with him." Snape took the orb. "When?" "Tomorrow night," Dumbledore said. "At the hour of turning, when the old magics are weakest." Snape nodded and guided Harry from the room. As they returned to their quarters, neither spoke. But that night, Harry dreamed again. The pool, the whispers, and the figure from the mirror, closer now. It smiled and said, "Even the purest blood can drown." Harry awoke gasping, the shadows clinging to him. And beneath the castle, something moved. The next day passed in a blur. Though classes went on as usual, there was a strange stillness in the castle, a pressure in the air, like the calm before a storm. Whispers followed Harry down the corridors, not from students this time, but from something more ancient, more aware. The wards themselves seemed to notice him. Snape barely left his side. At meals, in the common areas, even during defense against the dark arts, he hovered nearby with a subtle but ever-watchful eye. Harry didn't mind. Not anymore. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, Harry returned to their quarters and found Snape dressed not in his usual teaching robes, but in traveling gear, dark leather with reinforced stitching and a hood lined with protective runes. A small satchel sat beside him, filled with files, scrolls, and one carefully wrapped object, the mirror's fragment. "Ready?" Snape asked without turning. Harry nodded, his wand clutched tight in his hand. "Let's do it." Snape handed him a potion without a label. "Drink. For clarity and resistance. The descent will test your mind." Harry downed it without hesitation. It burned on the way down, not unlike fire whiskey, though he'd never had any. His thoughts sharpened almost instantly. They moved swiftly through the castle under the cover of night. Dumbledore's orb guided their steps, casting a soft light that shifted and curved as they moved through forgotten staircases and corridors untouched for centuries. Eventually, the orb hovered in front of a massive wall, etched with runes Harry couldn't read. Snape pressed his hand against the stone and murmured, "Permit lumen transitum." The wall shimmered, then vanished. Beyond was a spiraling staircase made of stone so black it looked like polished obsidian. As they descended, the temperature dropped, and the air grew heavy. The deeper they went, the less Harry felt like they were in Hogwarts. This was older Rar. Finally, they reached a vast cavernous chamber. The pool lay at the center, its surface rippling though nothing touched it. Around it were pillars carved with symbols of time, blood, and will. At the far end, an altar, cracked and ancient, stood beneath a mural painted directly onto the stone wall. The mural depicted a man cloaked in green fire, his arms outstretched as a crowd of robed figures bowed before him. Harry stepped closer. "That's him, isn't it? Morvin." Snape gave a sharp nod. His final rite was interrupted. The Founders sealed him below, but the pool held his memory. He began drawing a circle around the altar with salt and powdered onyx. "We'll use the mirror's fragment as a conduit. You'll place something of personal value on the altar. Then we'll speak the rite of severance. It must come from you, Harry. I cannot force this." Harry reached into his pocket and slowly withdrew the object he'd chosen earlier. A photograph, old and slightly faded. It showed his parents, James and Lily, laughing, holding baby Harry between them. He had looked at it every night since Snape gave it to him last year. Snape's expression darkened when he saw the picture, but he didn't protest. Harry stepped forward and placed it on the altar. As he did, the pool behind them shimmered, then hissed. A swirl of green mist rose from it, coiling in the air like smoke with intent. Snape thrust the mirror's fragment into the salt circle. "Begin." Harry's hands shook as he began the incantation Snape had taught him. "By blood unbidden, by will unbound, I sever thee from hallowed ground. No echo shall remain, no tether find breath. By my choice, I grant thee death." The photograph glowed gold, then burst into shimmering embers. The mist above the pool screamed, a sound that bypassed Harry's ears and sliced directly into his skull. Snape grabbed his shoulder. "Stay focused." Harry shouted the words again, louder, pushing every ounce of strength into them. "By my choice, I grant thee death." The fragment of the mirror blazed white. The pool exploded in light. The scream crescendoed, becoming words. "You deny your legacy, child of power. But it will not deny you." The green mist shot forward, but instead of Harry, it struck the circle and rebounded, slamming into one of the stone pillars. The entire chamber shuddered. Cracks split the ceiling. Snape grabbed Harry's arm. "We've done enough. The seal holds, for now. We must leave before the structure collapses." They sprinted up the spiral staircase, the ground rumbling behind them. Dust and rock fell in chunks. The orb raced ahead, guiding their return through the shaking corridors. By the time they burst through the wall and back into the lower dungeons, the staircase behind them had collapsed entirely. Panting, covered in dust, Harry fell to his knees. Snape knelt beside him, eyes scanning for injuries. "You did well. Better than I expected." Harry looked up, sweat dripping from his brow. "Did it work?" Snape nodded slowly. "The link is broken. Morvin is sealed. The pool will no longer call to you." Harry exhaled in relief. But then, somewhere far above them, a different sound echoed, like a thunderclap against the castle's very bones. Snape rose to his feet. That wasn't the pool. They raced upward, this time toward the headmaster's office. Dumbledore met them at the door, his face unusually pale. "There's been an incident," he said grimly. "At the Ministry. The Department of Mysteries." "What kind of incident?" Snape asked sharply. Dumbledore didn't blink. "A break-in. A vault was opened, one that's remained untouched for over 1,000 years. The vault of the original Founders." Harry's blood turned to ice. Dumbledore looked at him. "And someone stole a relic, bearing Morvin's crest. The headmaster's words hung in the air like a storm cloud. A relic, Snape repeated, his voice dangerously low. From the Founder's vault, bearing Morvin's crest? Dumbledore nodded gravely. Yes. The security wards were bypassed using a signature linked to ancient bloodlines. A binding seal was broken from within. Harry's stomach twisted. Do you think it was me? No, Dumbledore said quickly. Not directly. The ritual you performed severed Morvin's link to the pool. But that echo we banished may have been enough to trigger a chain reaction. Something or someone has been watching. Waiting. Snape paced, the folds of his cloak snapping with every turn. Do we know what was taken? Dumbledore's expression turned distant. A circlet, made of obsidian and blood silver. It once belonged to Morvin himself. Said to enhance magical influence, not through brute force but through suggestion. It makes thoughts into whispers and whispers into action. Harry paled. You mean it can control people? Dumbledore nodded. Given time, yes. And if someone powerful were to wear it, could become law. Snape muttered something under his breath, then turned sharply. Who has the circlet? That, Dumbledore said, remains uncertain. The intruder left no trace. Only the broken vault seal and a single feather, black with silver veins. Harry frowned. I've seen a feather like that before, in a book Snape gave me. About animagi. Snape stiffened. The Shadow Hawk. Harry blinked. That's real. Dumbledore nodded. It's more than real. It was believed to be Morvin's personal animagus form, a hawk woven from shadow, used to pass unseen through the old world. The form was lost to history, until now. Snape's jaw clenched. So someone didn't just steal the relic. They revived his form. Dumbledore stepped back to his desk and conjured a map of the magical world. Threads of glowing light traced across continents, focusing on ancient magical sites. One blinked red near the Highlands. The trail leads north, Dumbledore said, toward Durmstrang's abandoned northern annex. That section of the school was sealed after the Great Purge. It's remote, wild, forgotten. Snape turned to Harry. We're going. Harry straightened. When? Tonight. Dumbledore held up a hand. Wait. This isn't just a mission. This is war. Morvin's relic may already be in use. If the bearer has begun activating its power, we'll be walking into a trap. Snape's eyes narrowed. I'd rather walk into the trap than let it grow stronger. Harry stepped forward. Me too. Dumbledore hesitated, then gave a single nod. Very well. But you won't go alone. He turned and opened a hidden panel behind a tapestry, revealing someone Harry hadn't expected to see again so soon, Remus Lupin. Remus? Harry gasped. The werewolf smiled faintly. Hello, Harry. I've been keeping an eye on things. Snape didn't bother hiding his frown. You knew? I suspected, Lupin replied. Dumbledore asked me to monitor northern magical movements after the pool was sealed. I picked up traces of enchantment not seen since the age of the Founders. Someone has been preparing for this for a long time. Snape muttered. Then we waste no more time. Lupin looked at Harry. You're stronger than the last time I saw you. And judging by the look in your eyes, more like Severus than James. Harry gave a dry smile. Guess I've had different teachers. They departed that night under heavy wards and protective charms. Dumbledore gave them a portkey, a silver ring engraved with interlocking runes. One touch and the world twisted. They landed in the icy wastelands north of the Scandinavian peninsula. A ruin loomed ahead, stone towers fractured by time, walls scorched black with old magic. The northern annex of Durmstrang stood like a graveyard of forgotten knowledge. They made their way inside, wands drawn. The air was thick with enchantments, layers of illusion, silence, and darkness. Even Lupin's enhanced senses struggled. But Harry felt something else. A pulse. A rhythm. Like a heartbeat echoing through the stone. He followed it down a narrow corridor, ignoring Snape's protests. The pulse led him to a chamber filled with statues, each one carved to resemble a different wizard. Their faces were twisted in agony. In the center stood a tall figure clad in tattered robes, back turned. Snape raised his wand. Don't move. The figure turned, and Harry's breath caught. It was a student, no older than 17. Eyes glazed silver, skin etched with moving runes. In his hand was the obsidian circlet. "I heard him," the boy whispered. "In my dreams. In the walls. He said I could fix everything." Snape's face darkened. "Put it down." The boy smiled, a wide, unnatural grin. "He chose me. I see now. The wizards of today are broken. But I will mend them." He lifted the circlet. Snape fired a spell, too late. The circlet settled on the boy's brow. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the statues around the room groaned and moved. They turned toward the intruders, eyes glowing the same eerie silver. The boy's voice echoed, layered with something older, deeper. "Let the world be remade." Snape grabbed Harry's arm. "We're outmatched. Run." They fled as the statues lunged, stone limbs crashing down with inhuman strength. Lupin held the rear, blasting them apart with controlled bursts of fire. But for every one they felled, two more rose. They reached the entry hall, but the boy's voice echoed behind them. "You cannot run from destiny, child of blood." Harry turned, wand glowing. "I'm not running. I'm choosing." He unleashed a stunning spell laced with his will, his refusal, and it collided with the chamber wall, bringing stone down in a thunderous collapse that sealed the boy and his creations inside, at least for now. Panting, heart racing, Harry looked up at Snape. "He's not just channeling Morvin. He's becoming him." Snape nodded grimly. "Then we end this. Before it's too late." The journey back to Hogwarts was solemn. The portkey dropped them directly in the headmaster's office, where Dumbledore waited, flanked by Professors McGonagall and Flitwick. The moment he saw the grave expressions, he raised a hand to still any explanation. "I felt it," Dumbledore murmured. "The awakening. The circlet has bonded with him." Harry nodded. He wasn't just speaking, it was like something else was speaking through him. He said Morvin chose him. Flitwick turned pale. "If that bond deepens, the circlet's influence will become irreversible. Morvin doesn't just possess power, he was a master of manipulation. Even death couldn't sever his will completely." Snape stepped forward. He's already begun raising a guard. The statues in the annex weren't animated by standard magic. He used thought threads. Ancient Minecraft. They obeyed because they were compelled by shared purpose. Lupin added quietly, "The boy never gave his name. I saw his eyes. They were gone, like a puppet who believed he was pulling his own strings." Dumbledore nodded, then conjured a spectral map in the air. It centered not on Hogwarts, but beyond, stretching eastward across the magical ley lines of Europe. "The pull is strengthening," he said. "Ancient bloodlines, long dormant, are being disturbed. Some magical families are already receiving whispers in their sleep. Instructions, promises. The circlet amplifies suggestion. If this spreads, he won't need an army," McGonagall said. "He'll make one." Snape crossed his arms. "Then we cut him off at the source. Before he finds a conduit strong enough to unlock Morvin's full memories." Flitwick spoke with urgency. "There's only one such conduit left, the Scroll of Echoes. Hidden in the archives of Avalon." Dumbledore raised his brow. "That scroll was deemed too dangerous even for the Department of Mysteries. It records not only events but intentions. If Morvin's will is written there, he could rewrite the past into the present," Snape finished grimly. Harry took a breath. "Then we find it before he does." McGonagall looked between them all. "Avalon's ruins are shrouded. No one's reached them in centuries." Dumbledore turned to Harry. "No one except a Potter." Harry blinked. "What?" "Your mother's side," Dumbledore said. "The Evans family had druidic blood. When Lily married James, their union created a magical convergence. One of the last keys to the archive's veil lies in your blood. That's why Morvin's magic keeps reacting to you. It's not just fate, it's design." Snape narrowed his eyes. "Then we've been reacting to his moves long enough. Now we make one of our own." Within the hour, they gathered supplies. Wards. Potions. The protective ring once owned by Godric Gryffindor, passed down to Dumbledore. He gave it to Harry, placing it firmly in his palm. "You will need it," Dumbledore said. "The scroll tests more than strength. It tests the soul." That night, under the cover of magical concealment, Harry, Snape, and Lupin disapparated to the Isle of Skye, where ancient runes hinted at the doorway to Avalon. There, in the high cliffs surrounded by mists, stood a stone arch half buried in earth and time. As Harry stepped forward, the ring in his hand glowed. The arch responded, stones shifting and aligning until a portal of golden mist shimmered to life. Lupin grinned. "Guess you're invited." Snape muttered, "Let's not waste it." They stepped through. The world on the other side was silent. Not just quiet, silent. The sky shimmered like the surface of still water. Trees grew in impossible spirals, and floating among them were scrolls and parchments glowing with soft, pulsing light. They moved carefully through the twisted forest, guided by the ring's glow. Harry felt the scroll before he saw it. An enormous piece of parchment suspended in the air, its text shifting with every glance. A pedestal of crystal floated beneath it, pulsing with golden light. Snape reached for it, but the moment his hand neared, the scroll burned white-hot and rejected him. "It won't let me near." Harry stepped forward. The scroll stilled. It waited. He placed his hand on the pedestal. Visions flooded his mind, centuries of memory, thought, and raw magic. He saw Morvin standing atop a cliff, binding armies to his voice with a single command. He saw the founders confronting him, not with rage, but with sorrow. And he saw the young boy who now wore the circlet, his soul being unraveled thread by thread, replaced with something far older. Then a voice echoed, not Morvin's, but a woman's. "You are not your legacy, child. You are your choice." Harry opened his eyes. The scroll had written a new line. "The past cannot chain the willing heart." Snape peered over his shoulder. "It's a counter-seal, a phrase that breaks Morvin's right." Harry nodded, copying it onto a parchment. "We can use it. If we confront the boy with the scroll present, we might sever the connection." Lupin's ears twitched. "We have company." They turned. From the shadows emerged figures, robed, silent, eyes glowing silver. Not just statues now. People. Wizards and witches, some young, some old, wearing cloaks marked with Morvin's sigil. And at their center, the boy. He no longer looked human. Veins of silver ran across his face, and when he smiled, his teeth shimmered like polished obsidian. "You followed me into dreams," he said. "Now I invite you to the waking." Snape raised his wand. "This ends now." The boy chuckled. "No, this begins now." With a wave of his hand, the cultists lunged. But Harry didn't flinch. He stepped forward, parchment in hand, voice steady. "The past cannot chain the willing heart." The scroll blazed with light, and for a moment the boy froze, eyes wide. Then he screamed. The circlet pulsed with black fire, and the very ground beneath Avalon began to tremble. The earth shuddered beneath Harry's feet as Avalon began to tear apart. Cracks split the crystalline pedestal. Scrolls erupted into sparks, flaring then fading like dying stars. The silver-veined cultists faltered, some stumbling to their knees, clutching their heads. The boy with the circlet let out a strangled scream as black and silver fire surged around him, the relic struggling against the ancient words Harry had spoken. Snape grabbed Harry's arm. "The counter-seal, say it again." Harry shouted over the roar of collapsing stone. "The past cannot chain the willing heart." The words surged like lightning through the grove. The scroll flashed gold, and the flames around the boy's body dimmed, the runes on his skin flickering. For a moment, Harry saw something, just a glimpse, in the boy's eyes. Confusion. Fear. Humanity. Then the circlet pulsed again, and that glimpse was gone. "I am chosen," the boy howled. "He lives in me." Lupin moved swiftly, blasting back 2 cultists with a surge of blue flame. "We can't hold this place, Severus." The entire dimension's collapsing. Snape nodded, grabbing the parchment from Harry. "Then we take what we came for and run." The boy extended his hand, and the air shimmered. Tendrils of shadow shot forward, snatching at Harry's legs. The ground crumbled underfoot as he stumbled. One caught his ankle. He was yanked off his feet, only for Snape to throw himself forward, slashing with a blade of raw magic that severed the tendril in a spray of dark mist. Harry hit the ground hard, gasping. Snape hauled him up. "Move!" They sprinted back through the spiral forest, ducking collapsing trees and arcs of rogue magic. Behind them, the boy's voice followed, echoing with 1,000 others layered within it. "You cannot stop what is already written." They reached the portal arch just as the last stones began to fall inward. Lupin threw a charm to stabilize it for a moment, long enough for them to leap through. They landed hard in the snow of the Isle of Skye, panting. Behind them, The golden arch shattered into shards of floating crystal and disappeared into nothingness. Avalon was gone. Snape sat back in the snow, robes torn, breathing heavily. Harry stared at the empty space where the portal had been. He's too far gone. Lupin shook his head. No. For a moment he was there. He was still there. Snape slowly stood. The counterseal works. We've weakened the circlet's hold, but not broken it. If we can bring the boy to the scroll again. Harry cut in. We can try to free him completely. Snape gave a small nod. We'll need the real scroll, not just a reflection. The original exists in one place now, Hogwarts. Dumbledore transferred part of Avalon's knowledge into the Founder's hidden archive years ago. Harry's eyes widened. The Hall of Echoes. Snape raised an eyebrow. You know it. I read about it in a book you gave me, Harry said. It's buried beneath the castle, only accessible through a binding charm cast by a Founder's heir. Lupin frowned. So we need a descendant. Snape looked at Harry. Harry blinked. Wait me? But I'm not. You're more than just a Potter, Snape said. Lily's side, remember? Druidic blood. Her line traces back to the sister of Helga Hufflepuff. That's enough. Harry didn't argue. Back at Hogwarts, Dumbledore met them with a rare flicker of hope when he saw the glowing parchment Snape carried. You succeeded. Barely, Snape muttered. Avalon's lost, but the scroll's imprint remains. Dumbledore led them to a hidden stair beneath the Great Hall. They descended for what felt like hours, deep beneath the foundations of the castle. At last, they reached a vast circular chamber lit by floating torches and echoing whispers. The Hall of Echoes. Ancient memories filled the air. Visions of duels long past, whispered arguments of the Founders, flickers of students learning their first spells. It was like walking through the soul of the school. Dumbledore handed Harry a dagger with a golden hilt. Blood magic guards this place. Just a drop willingly given. Harry pricked his thumb and let a drop fall onto the floor. The room shivered. A wall shimmered into transparency, revealing a second chamber with an ornate plinth. Resting atop it was the true Scroll of Echoes, its surface glowing faintly with ancient energy. As they approached, the scroll opened on its own, revealing the counter seal. But more than that. Lines of text began forming anew, recording what had just happened in Avalon. Harry read the newest inscription aloud. The bearer of the willing heart may sever the shadows with truth. But only in sacrifice shall the binding end. Lupin's brow furrowed. Sacrifice. Dumbledore's expression turned solemn. It means the circlet cannot be broken by force or words alone. Someone must willingly surrender their magical essence to seal the relic permanently. Snape's voice was quiet. A life. No, Dumbledore corrected. A gift. Magic willingly given. But once done, that witch or wizard would never cast again. Harry stared at the parchment. So someone has to give up their magic to save the boy? Yes, Dumbledore confirmed. And to end Morvin's influence forever. A heavy silence fell. Snape looked at the scroll, then at Harry. There has to be another way. But Harry knew deep down that the scroll never lied. And the boy they'd faced was getting stronger. Above them, the ground trembled. Distantly, bells rang. The first signs of Morvin's influence reaching the castle. Dumbledore looked up. He's coming. Snape turned to Harry, voice low and firm. Then we finish this. One way or another. The trembling in the ground wasn't natural. As Harry, Snape, Lupin, and Dumbledore stared at the Scroll of Echoes, dust sifted down from the ceiling of the Hall of Echoes, and the walls seemed to groan with pressure. The tremors weren't just magical. They were personal, pulsing with the unmistakable energy of the circlet's bearer. He's here, Snape said quietly, eyes narrowing. He's not waiting for us to come to him anymore. Then we don't have time, Dumbledore murmured. He must know the scroll is here. He means to destroy it. Lupin turned toward the stairs. I'll go to the front gates. If he's bringing others, we need to hold the castle. Snape nodded. I'll take Harry and the scroll to the room of containment. It's the only place within Hogwarts strong enough to suppress that kind of magic, even the circlets. Dumbledore's gaze swept between them. We act quickly. Harry, this will be the most dangerous moment you've faced yet. Morvin is not merely possessing that boy, he's reshaping him. But if you can reach him, even for a second, the scroll may be enough. Harry nodded, gripping the rolled parchment tightly. "We have to try." They parted swiftly. Lupin sprinted up toward the entrance hall, wand raised, cloak billowing. Dumbledore followed close behind to raise the castle's defensive enchantments. Snape and Harry moved deeper through the dungeons, navigating a path few in the castle even knew existed. As they reached the room of containment, an ancient circular vault carved from obsidian and embedded with suppressive runes, Snape turned to Harry, locking the heavy stone door behind them. "You need to understand," Snape said softly. "If this goes wrong, if he turns that power fully on you, I may not be able to shield you." Harry looked up. "You've already done more than anyone else would have." Snape gave a grim nod. "I'm not done yet." They unrolled the scroll on the obsidian altar at the room's center. The glowing script pulsed in time with the castle's tremors. New lines appeared, as if reacting to the boy's growing proximity. "When the bearer of darkness stands before the heart unclouded, his soul may choose light or oblivion." "It's giving him a chance," Harry whispered. "Even now." Snape's jaw clenched. "And if he doesn't take it?" Harry looked him square in the eyes. "Then I'll make sure he never hurts anyone else." Before Snape could reply, the walls shuddered violently, and a thunderous crack echoed above. A second later, the torches extinguished themselves, and a rush of cold, void-like air swept through the room. Snape's wand flared instantly with light. "He's breached the upper defenses." Then the ceiling above the room of containment fractured. A spiral of dark mist poured through the crack, and with it descended the boy. But he wasn't a boy anymore. The circlet had fully fused to his head, melted into his skin. His eyes gleamed with silver and black flame. He floated inches above the floor, cloaked in shadow that pulsed like a heartbeat. Snape stepped between him and Harry. "You don't know what you've become." "I know," the boy said, voice layered with countless echoes. "I remember everything now. Morvin's memories, his wisdom, his pain. He was right. They feared him because he told the truth." Harry moved to the side, scroll open and glowing. He was feared because he controlled people, because he destroyed anyone who didn't kneel. The boy's gaze flicked toward Harry. "You speak like someone who's never felt powerless." "I have," Harry said. "I was powerless, until someone gave me a chance." He held up the scroll. "This is your chance." The room stilled. For a moment, the shadows around the boy recoiled. His feet touched the floor. The silver flame dimmed in his eyes. He took one step toward the scroll. Snape didn't lower his wand. "Harry," the boy said slowly, "what if I don't want to give it up? What if this power is who I am now?" Harry didn't waver. "Then it'll destroy you." The scroll's light intensified, reacting to the tension. The script shimmered, then bled into red text. The choice must be made. Magic or mercy. Power or peace. And then the moment shattered. The boy's hand snapped up. A wave of dark force surged forward. Snape threw up a shield, but it cracked instantly. He was thrown back, hitting the wall with a gasp. The scroll was nearly torn from Harry's hands as the boy advanced. "You had your chance," the boy said. "Now I write the ending." The circlet pulsed. Shadows coiled around Harry like serpents. But Harry didn't run. He stepped forward and pressed his palm onto the scroll. "I choose mercy." Golden fire exploded from the parchment. It hit the boy full force, no longer an attack but a mirror. He screamed as visions surged through him, his real memories. A laughing sister. A kind-eyed father. Moments of joy and pain before the circlet. And then, silence. The shadows withdrew. The circlet cracked, just slightly, and fell to the ground with a dull chime. The boy collapsed. Snape staggered up, catching Harry before he could fall. "Is he?" Harry nodded weakly. "He's himself again." The boy stirred, dazed. His eyes brown again, filled with tears. "I didn't mean to. I didn't." "You weren't alone," Harry said quietly. "None of us are." Snape looked down at the cracked circlet, then raised his wand. "We destroy it. Now." But the scroll flared again. "Only sacrifice may seal the final echo." Snape stared at the line. Then slowly he stepped toward the scroll. Harry grabbed his arm. "No, you can't." Snape's voice was low but steady. "I was part of the darkness once. Let me be part of the light now." Harry's grip tightened. "There has to be another way." Snape looked at him and smiled. "There always is. But sometimes, this one is the right way." Then he placed his hand on the scroll. Light erupted around them as Severus Snape's magic, decades of skill, power, and memory, poured into the seal. The circlet shattered. The room fell silent. Snape stumbled, pale, and caught himself on the altar. The magic was gone from his body, but in his eyes there was peace. Harry caught him before he fell. Above, the sun finally broke through the clouds over Hogwarts. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, hope was real. The golden morning sun filtered through the shattered ceiling of the room of containment, casting long shafts of light across the obsidian floor. Dust settled slowly in the air like snowflakes suspended in time, and for a moment, there was nothing but the sound of breath, labored, quiet, alive. Harry supported Snape's weight with one arm as he helped him ease to the floor. Snape's face was pale, drained of color, and the familiar spark in his black eyes had dimmed. Not gone, but changed. Calmer. Still. Severus, Harry said softly. Can you hear me? Snape gave a weak nod. I'm not deaf, Potter. Harry smiled despite the heaviness in his chest. You did it. Snape's gaze drifted toward the remains of the circlet, now little more than glinting dust scattered across the black stone. Yes, he murmured. But not alone. The boy who had worn the circlet lay nearby, unconscious but breathing evenly. He looked younger now, his face no longer twisted with pain or power. Just a boy, lost and slowly finding his way back. Lupin arrived moments later, robes singed, wand still in hand. He froze at the threshold of the vault, eyes scanning the room. Relief softened the hard lines of his face when he saw Harry and Snape alive. You won, he said, stepping carefully over the fallen debris. We did, Harry said, nodding toward the boy and the glowing scroll that now lay quiet on the altar. Dumbledore appeared next, walking with a slow grace that belied the urgency in his eyes. He took in the broken circlet, the boy, and finally Snape. The old headmaster knelt beside him. You gave your magic. Snape gave a faint, sarcastic smile. No use keeping it. I'd only use it on students. Dumbledore looked at him with a strange fondness. For what it's worth, Severus, you've saved more than just this school. I know, Snape said quietly. Harry helped him to his feet, and together, they began the long walk back through the lower halls. The castle itself had quieted. The tremors had stopped. The air felt lighter, freer. The shadows were gone, not just from the walls, but from Harry's heart. In the hospital wing, Madame Pomfrey fussed over them all, especially Snape, whose wand arm had gone limp from the strain of the ritual. This arm will never work quite the same, she muttered, but with care and therapy you should adjust. Snape simply nodded, his expression unreadable. The boy, his name was revealed at last to be Elias, awoke several hours later. His memory was fragmented but intact. He remembered the cult, the circle, the moment the circlet touched his brow, and then almost nothing. I thought I was strong, he whispered to Harry. That power would make everything right. But it just burned everything away. Harry sat beside him. You were tricked, controlled, but you made the right choice in the end. That's what matters. Elias looked down at his hands. I don't know how to fix what I broke. You start by forgiving yourself, Harry said. Then you help others. One step at a time. As word spread through the wizarding world, the news of Avalon's collapse, the destruction of the circlet of Morvin, and Snape's sacrifice rippled like a quiet storm. Most didn't understand the details. But they understood one thing clearly. Something ancient, something terrible, had come and gone, and Hogwarts had endured. The Ministry tried to claim credit. Dumbledore politely deflected. Lupin declined every interview. Snape refused to comment at all. And Harry found himself caught in the strange twilight of heroism and anonymity. He didn't seek fame. He spent his days helping Elias adjust to the world outside the cult, teaching him the basics of Hogwarts life, helping him navigate the guilt and confusion. I never thought you'd be a teacher, Elias said once with a grin. Harry snorted. Neither did I. Snape watched all of this quietly. Though he no longer cast spells, he remained in Hogwarts, serving as a mentor, a guide, and a fiercely respected mind. He taught theory, history, and even potions again. With the help of a magically inscribed chalkboard he controlled with a flick of his non-magical hand. He never complained. Not once. Magic isn't power, he told a third-year class one day. It's a responsibility. One that too many abuse. Your wand doesn't make you strong. Your choices do. Harry, passing by the classroom, paused and smiled faintly at the words. One evening, not long after, Dumbledore invited them all to his office. The sun was setting behind the castle, casting firelight across the many moving portraits and dusty bookshelves. You have done something remarkable, Dumbledore said to Harry. Something not even the founders themselves accomplished. You changed a fate already written. Harry shook his head. I didn't do it alone. No, Dumbledore agreed. But it was you who kept your heart unclouded. He turned to Snape. And you, Severus, have proven that sacrifice need not mean defeat. Snape folded his arms. If this is a prelude to a medal, you can keep it. Dumbledore smiled. Only gratitude, then. Lupin raised a glass. To the boy who chose mercy. They all drank. Later that night, Harry returned to Gryffindor Tower and sat by the window, watching the stars appear one by one. A soft rustle behind him drew his attention. Elias stood in the doorway, holding a letter. The headmaster says I'm allowed to stay. He's giving me a chance. Harry stood and clapped him on the shoulder. Then make it count. As Elias left, Harry looked up once more at the stars. The darkness had come. It had nearly consumed them all. But they had endured. And tomorrow they would rise again. The days that followed felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in what seemed like forever, there were no ancient curses, no hidden threats, no whispers of dark magic echoing through the castle walls. Hogwarts breathed again, its enchanted halls alive with laughter and lessons rather than dread and disruption. Harry found himself drifting into a routine that didn't involve dueling or near-death encounters. Breakfast in the Great Hall, classes with Hermione and Ron, evening walks through the courtyard, normal things. But there was still a sense of watchfulness in him. Not fear, exactly, but awareness. Scars didn't fade overnight. Snape had resumed his place in the dungeons, not as the feared potions master, but as a new figure entirely, something between a scholar, a mentor, and a living legend. He walked the halls slowly, often seen with books tucked under one arm and a faint limp from his ordeal. His magic, drained almost entirely by the ritual, had not returned. And it might never. Still, his presence remained powerful. Students didn't dare mock or pity him. They respected him, some even revered him. To most of them, he was the professor who had given up everything to save the school. To Harry, he was something else. Family. That connection, however strange, had become unshakable. Professor Snape, Harry asked one afternoon as they sat in the private study Dumbledore had arranged for him. Do you regret it? Snape raised an eyebrow over the edge of his book. Be more specific. Giving up your magic. All of it. Snape was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. Do you remember when I told you that power must be earned, not seized? Harry nodded. I spent most of my life proving myself through power, Snape said, his voice low. I believed it was the only way to matter. But it was never enough. Not for them. Not even for myself. He closed the book gently. But watching you, seeing how you faced Morvin, how you stood your ground not through force, but conviction, that was the first time I understood what real strength looked like. Harry blinked, unsure how to respond. He'd never heard Snape speak with such honesty. Or humility. You were the strongest one in that room, Harry, Snape continued. And if I had to give up everything to protect that strength, then no. I don't regret it. Harry looked down at his hands. I only did what you taught me. Snape scoffed softly. And you still call me the dramatic one. Outside the study, the world kept turning. Students returned to their usual antics. Peeves resumed his mischief. Quidditch matches picked up again. But change had rippled through the school, too. Elias, once the vessel of the circlet, had been placed into Gryffindor under Dumbledore's careful consideration. It raised some eyebrows, but no one questioned it publicly. He was quiet and withdrawn at first, speaking little and constantly glancing over his shoulder, as though expecting the shadows to reclaim him. Harry made it a point to include him in things, study sessions, meals, even games of exploding snap. Ron remained skeptical. He did almost blast you across the dungeons, mate. Harry shrugged. He was being controlled. He levitated, in a cloud of black fog. Hermione elbowed Ron. He's trying. Ron sighed. All right, But if he sprouts horns or starts glowing again, I'm hexing him." It was slow, but Elias began to open up. He even laughed once, startled by his own voice when it happened. "I thought I'd never get to do that again," he said. "You will," Harry told him. "Every day forward is yours." Meanwhile, Dumbledore arranged for scholars from around the world to study the remains of the Scroll of Echoes. Whatever magic had forged it was older than even the Founder's time. Some believed it predated Hogwarts itself. But Harry wasn't interested in artifacts anymore. He'd seen enough ancient magic to last a lifetime. One evening, as the air turned crisp and autumn crept in, Snape called Harry into his quarters. The dungeons were cold, but the room was warm, lit by floating orbs of light and the soft glow of enchanted candles. Snape held out a letter. "What's this?" Harry asked. "An offer," Snape said. "From the Board of Governors. They want you to consider an apprenticeship." Harry blinked. "At Hogwarts?" Snape nodded. "Under me." Harry stared. "But, you can't use magic anymore." "No," Snape said evenly. "But I can still teach it. And I could use an assistant who's not afraid to challenge me." Harry's brow furrowed. "Isn't that a bit early? I haven't even taken my NEWTS." Snape gave him a long look. "You faced something older than the Dark Lord himself, destroyed it, and saved a student no one else could reach. I think you've earned the right to a few early offers." Harry looked down at the letter. His fingers tightened around the parchment. A quiet warmth settled in his chest. "I'll think about it," he said, voice soft. Snape nodded once. "Do that." As Harry left, he paused at the doorway. "Professor." Snape looked up. "I'm glad it was you who raised me." There was a pause. Then, for the first time in a very long while, Snape smiled. Not a sneer. Not a smirk. A real smile. And in that moment, Harry knew they were finally free from the shadow of their pasts. Together, they had rewritten the future. Winter descended on Hogwarts with gentle quietude, frosting the windows and blanketing the grounds in white. The Black Lake froze at the edges, and the Whomping Willow stood motionless, its branches stiff with snow. There was peace for once. A real, tangible peace. Yet for Harry, it brought questions that had long gone unanswered. He sat by the fire in Gryffindor Tower, the letter from the Board of Governors still folded in his pocket. Ron snored softly in the bed nearby, and Hermione's book lay open on the arm of her chair, long since fallen from her hands. But Harry couldn't sleep. Not yet. Snape's offer had weighed on him. It wasn't just about the apprenticeship. It was about identity. About whether he could see himself as more than the boy who lived. More than the boy who'd survived another ancient horror. Could he be a teacher? A mentor? Could he become like Snape? The next morning, Harry slipped quietly into the dungeons before classes began. The chill in the stone corridors never really left, even with enchanted heat. Snape was already seated at his desk, scribbling notes on parchment with long, purposeful strokes of a quill. "I've been thinking about your offer," Harry began, his voice echoing slightly. Snape didn't look up. "And I want to accept, but only if I can do more than assist. I want to teach, even if just one lesson a week." That made Snape look up. His dark eyes narrowed slightly, appraising. "You're still a student, Potter." Harry nodded. "So were you when you started brewing wolfsbane for Lupin?" Snape's lip twitched. "Touché." He leaned back slightly. "Very well. I'll speak to Dumbledore. But if you take this path, you commit to it. No more running into cursed basements or throwing yourself at ancient artifacts without warning." Harry smirked. "No promises." Later that week, Harry stood before a small group of fourth years in an unused classroom, his wand held loosely at his side. Nervous energy buzzed through him, but when he began speaking, about protective enchantments, defensive spells, and the power of restraint, it all flowed. He didn't lecture. He shared. And the students listened, not because of who he was, but because he knew what he was talking about. When the lesson ended, one Hufflepuff girl raised her hand. "Did Professor Snape really give up his magic for you?" Harry hesitated. "No," he answered carefully. "He gave it up to protect everyone. That's who he really is." Afterward, Harry returned to Snape's study. The older man listened silently as Harry recounted the lesson, only nodding at the end. "Not a terrible first attempt," Snape muttered before adding, "You'll want to speak less quickly. Nervous energy makes you hard to follow. Harry laughed. Thanks, Professor. In the coming weeks, the rhythm of life shifted. Elias began to find his footing as a student. While some still watched him with caution, he never lashed out, never gave them reason to fear. He sat beside Harry at meals and spent long hours in the library with Hermione, who had taken it upon herself to ensure he didn't fall behind. It's strange, Elias said one evening, staring out the window. Waking up and not hearing voices. Not feeling something trying to twist me. Harry nodded. That's called freedom. Elias gave him a sideways glance. And what do you do with freedom? Harry thought for a moment. You use it to make sure no one else loses theirs. Dumbledore watched all this from a distance, his eyes quietly pleased. He never interfered, but occasionally called Harry in for tea and gentle conversations about the past, about prophecy, and about the power of love in the face of hate. But one evening, he posed a new question. Harry, he said, pouring a second cup, what do you want to be? Harry blinked. I've never really thought about that. I was always too busy surviving. Then perhaps, Dumbledore said gently, now is the time. It was strange being asked that. For so long, Harry's life had been reactive, dodging curses, uncovering secrets, solving riddles of dark magic. But now the slate was clean. He thought of Snape, of Elias, of the students who looked up to him. And slowly, the answer began to take shape. I want to help others find their way, Harry said. Even when the path is dark. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. A worthy path indeed. As Christmas neared, Hogwarts transformed into a vision of warmth and magic. Garlands of holly hung in the corridors, and the great halls sparkled with enchanted snow. Students gathered around the fires, exchanging gifts and stories. There were no looming threats this year. No whispers of doom. On Christmas Eve, Snape invited Harry to his quarters again. There, beneath a flickering candle, he handed him a small package wrapped in dark green parchment. I thought you didn't do gifts, Harry said with a crooked smile. I don't, Snape replied. But I've made one exception. Harry opened the package slowly. Inside was a wand case, old but finely carved, and within it a wand. Snape gestured before Harry could ask. It's not mine, he said. It was a prototype Ollivander once designed. I commissioned it before the war ended, modified for those who can't use traditional casting. With time, it may resonate with you, or it may not. But it's something to work with. Harry held it reverently. Thank you. It's not a gift, Snape muttered. It's a tool. Still, Harry said quietly, thank you. That night, Harry stood alone outside the castle, snow falling softly around him. He raised the wand gently, murmured a quiet incantation, and a small, flickering light blossomed at its tip. Weak, trembling, but there. He smiled. It wasn't about strength. It wasn't about victory. It was about beginning again. Together, they all had survived the darkest magic of the age. Now they would build something new, something brighter. Spring returned to Hogwarts with a quiet grace. The snow melted from the battlements, replaced by the first crocuses blooming along the walkways. The lake shimmered in the sunlight, and the giant squid surfaced lazily, basking in warmth. It was the kind of peace that few at the school truly believed they would live to see. But it had come. For Harry, everything had changed, and yet somehow, everything had also begun to make sense. His lessons continued, not just the ones he taught, but those he still attended. McGonagall helped him refine his transfiguration, while Flitwick showed him subtleties in charm casting that no textbook could cover. And once a week he sat with Snape, more as equals now than student and teacher, and studied the theory of magic beyond spells, a discipline Snape called arcane resonance. You will never cast like others, Potter, Snape told him during one such lesson. But your connection to magic is deeper, stronger. You don't pull power from spells. You pour it into them. Harry understood. It was less about wand work now, and more about intention. Emotion. He had survived ancient curses, torn through magical binding rituals, and destroyed dark relics. The way he used magic was different, because he was different. Snape, too, was settling into his new life. Magicless, yes, but not powerless. He taught with precision, guided students with a newfound calm, and even on rare occasions, offered words of encouragement that didn't sound entirely like insults. The change was slow, but unmistakable. Even Ron had noticed. "He's still a git sometimes," Ron admitted. "But a better git, you know?" Hermione rolled her eyes. "He's doing his best. That should count for something." Elias made quiet progress as well. His nightmares had faded, and he began contributing in class. Professor Sprout declared him a natural at herbology. Even Hagrid invited him to help with the hippogriffs. "They know when someone's been through darkness," Hagrid said, "and come out the other side." One crisp morning in May, Dumbledore gathered the school in the Great Hall for an announcement. There was a buzz of curiosity as students took their seats, whispering and guessing. Harry sat beside Hermione and Ron, his stomach oddly tense. Dumbledore stepped forward, smiling gently. "We gather not to warn, but to celebrate," he said. "Too often in our world, we speak only when trouble stirs. But today we honor growth, sacrifice, and the future." He turned slightly. "Mr. Potter, please join me." Harry froze. Hermione nudged him gently. "Go on." He rose, every eye in the hall watching as he walked toward the front. Dumbledore placed a hand on his shoulder. "For his bravery beyond measure, and for reminding us that magic is not simply a power to wield, but a force to protect, Hogwarts is proud to name Harry James Potter our youngest ever apprentice in residence." Gasps echoed across the room. Then cheers erupted, first from Gryffindor, then from the other houses. Ron whooped. Hermione clapped with misty eyes. Harry stood there, overwhelmed. But as his gaze drifted toward the staff table and met Snape's, who gave him the faintest nod, a calm settled in his chest. Later, as the great hall cleared, Snape found him beneath the Ollery Tower, where he often went to think. "Don't let the noise of applause distract you from your path," Snape said. "Recognition is fleeting. Purpose is not." Harry nodded. "I don't care about the title." "I know," Snape said. "That's why you're worthy of it." They stood in silence for a while, watching the owls swoop and soar through the late morning sky. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if things had been different?" Harry asked. "If you hadn't raised me?" Snape was quiet. "Sometimes. But most days, I'm simply grateful we got this one right." Harry smiled. "Me too." That night, Harry wandered the castle alone, taking in every inch of the place he'd called home. Really called home, since he was 11. Not just a shelter from the Dursleys, but a place where he'd been loved, mentored, challenged, and finally understood. He found himself in the room of requirement one last time, but it didn't transform into a battlefield or a vault of secrets. Instead, it became a simple room, warm and lit by soft lanterns, with shelves full of books and a fireplace. And a photograph on the mantel. It showed Snape, arms crossed but not scowling, with Harry beside him, grinning. In the background were Ron, Hermione, and Elias. They were standing on the lawn post-duel, robes singed but laughing. A captured moment. A life that could have gone so differently. He stared at it for a while, then turned and left, letting the room vanish behind him. The next morning, trunks thumped against staircases as students prepared to board the train home. As Harry stood on the platform, watching steam billow from the Scarlet Engine, Snape appeared at his side. "Off to teach more young minds about exploding cauldrons and shield charms?" Snape asked. Harry laughed. "Someone has to do it." Snape looked at him, then really looked. "I was wrong about you, Potter. In many ways. But I never doubted you'd do something that mattered." Harry looked back at him, eyes firm. "And I never doubted you'd be the one who got me there." The train gave its final whistle. Hermione and Ron waved from a carriage window. Elias stood a few cars down, already reading. As Harry stepped aboard, he paused on the steps. "Professor?" Snape raised a brow. "I'll be back next year. Not just as a student, but as someone who belongs." Snape inclined his head. "Welcome home, Harry." The train pulled away, leaving Hogwarts behind, but not for long. For the first time, Harry didn't feel like he was leaving something. He was simply stepping forward. The war was over. The darkness had lifted. And from its shadow, a new life had been written. A life where Harry Potter had been raised by Severus Snape. And because of that, the world had changed. Forever. The end.